previously we saw that when you looked at the point differential between the Boston Celtics, the Oklahoma City Thunder, there was a difference between them, but it wasn't big enough to rule out the possibility that they're equivalent teams. That, given an infinite number of games, that they would have the same point differential. So let's look at a different measure, and this gives us an opportunity to compare two sample proportions instead of two sample means. So what we're going to look here is at their winning percentage, or the proportion of times that they won games. So for the Celtics, that proportion works out to be 0.780, and for Oklahoma City, it works out to be 0.695. So those calculations are here: 64 out of 82, 57 out of 82. Now, to conduct the hypothesis test here, we're going to look at whether or not these two proportions are different, and we need to calculate something called the pooled proportion, which is if you combined the two things together, the two, whatever you're comparing together, you combine their numerators and their denominators. So the pooled proportion in this case, we take the 64 plus the 57 and divide by the 82 plus the 82. And we get a pooled proportion of 0.738. Now, we needed that because it goes into the formula for the z-score here, which this is kind of a big, ugly mess. But to calculate the z-score, you need to plug everything in that goes into this formula. We have the sample proportion from one of the groups, the sample proportion from the other, then their population proportions according to the hypothesis test. Our null hypothesis, and what usually will be the null hypothesis, is that the proportions are the same, so the difference is 0, so usually this will be 0. And then we have the difference in proportions. The pooled proportion that we found goes here, and then NA and NB, those are the number of in the sample of the two groups A and B, which in this case it's both the same. They're both 82 game samples. So you plug in all the numbers into this formula to calculate the z-score. It's a value of 1.24. Plug that into to like the Excel calculations as we've done previously, and that should give you a p-value of 0.11, which would be greater than 0.05. So by this measure as well, we cannot reject the null hypothesis that the teams are equivalent. So what we've seen is that when there's a difference between two things, it still might be true that their population mean or their population proportion could be the same, and that it's just by randomness, by random chance, that they were observed to be as different as they are. And in this case, what we're talking about is the winning percentage of two teams. One team comes up on top, one team comes up just below, and the difference between them is not quite significant. So from a statistical standpoint, it's not a significant difference. We can't reject the null hypothesis that their true population values are the same.